What's the most painful way family has let you down? I was 19 when my appendix almost killed me. Like, literally almost killed me. It was a Tuesday night around 11 p.m., and I'd been feeling sick all day. Started with just this weird stomach ache, but by dinner, I couldn't even stand up straight. The pain was getting worse every hour. By 11, I was on my bathroom floor crying. Not like normal crying, but that scary kind where you can't catch your breath. Something was seriously wrong. I knew it wasn't just food poisoning or whatever. This felt different, like my body was breaking down from the inside. I called my mom first. Obviously, she's supposed to be the person who drops everything when you need her, right? Phone rang and rang. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail third time. Still nothing. At this point, I'm getting scared. Really scared. The pain was getting so bad I couldn't think straight. So I called my Aunt Katie, my mom's sister. She picks up on the second ring. Lena, what's wrong, honey? It's late. I'm crying so hard I can barely talk. Something's wrong with me. I need to go to the hospital. I can't reach Mom. There's this pause, this awful pause. Then Katie sigh. Oh, sweetie, your mom's busy with that new guy she's seeing. Just call an ambulance. Busy with her boyfriend while I'm dying on my bathroom floor. I hung up and called 911. The paramedics showed up in like 8 minutes, which felt like forever. They took one look at me and started moving fast, really fast. One of them kept saying things like, BP's dropping and we need to move now. In the ambulance, they put this IV in my arm and gave me oxygen. The pain was so bad I kept passing out. I remember asking if they could call my mom, and the paramedics said they'd try to reach my emergency contacts at the hospital. Turns out my appendix had ruptured, like completely burst inside me. The doctor said if I'd waited even 2 more hours, I probably would have died. Died at 19 because of something that could have been fixed if we'd caught it earlier. I woke up after surgery alone, completely alone. The nurses were nice, asking if I needed anything, if they should call someone. I just said no. What was the point? For 3 days, nobody came. No texts asking if I was okay. No flowers, no calls. The nurses kept giving me these looks like they felt sorry for me. One of them, this older lady named Helen, even brought me extra pudding cups because she said I looked too skinny. On day 4, my mom finally shows up. Not rushing in, worried sick, not crying or hugging me. She walks in casual, scrolling through her phone, and sits down like she's visiting someone with a cold. Hey baby, you look better. See, I told you it wasn't that serious. I just stared at her. She wasn't even looking at me. The doctor said, you're fine now, right? These things happen. Your Aunt Katie made it sound like you were dying or something. She's so dramatic. That's when I lost it. I almost did die. My appendix burst. They said if I'd waited any longer. She finally looked up from her phone. But you didn't. You're fine. Stop being so dramatic. She stayed for maybe 20 minutes. Spent most of it complaining about hospital parking fees and how her new boyfriend Jake was taking her to some fancy restaurant that weekend. She left saying she'd check on me later. She never came back. When I got discharged, Helen, the nurse, offered to call me a ride. I said I'd figure it out. Took an Uber home to my empty dorm room. My roommate was gone for the weekend. 2 months later, my cousin Dylan let something slip during Thanksgiving dinner. He mentioned how his mom, my Aunt Rachel, had called around looking for my mom during my surgery. Turns out she wasn't even in town. She'd gone on some weekend trip to Vegas with Jake. Hadn't even been answering her phone because she was trying to disconnect while I was getting cut open to save my life. She was playing slots in Vegas. That was it for me. I moved out of the dorms that December, got my own place with student loans, and blocked her number. Changed my emergency contacts to Helen the nurse because a stranger cared more about me than my own mother. Haven't spoken to her since. Best decision I ever made. I was 19 when my appendix almost killed me. It was a Tuesday night around 11 p.m., and I'd been feeling sick all day. It started as a weird stomach ache, but by dinner, the pain had gotten so bad I couldn't even stand straight. Each hour, it worsened. By 11 p.m., I was on the bathroom floor crying. Not the usual kind of crying, but the kind where you can't catch your breath. I knew something serious was wrong. This wasn't food poisoning or a mild illness. My body felt like it was breaking down from the inside. I called my mom first. You'd expect she'd drop whatever she was doing, right? The phone just rang and rang, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. The third time, nothing. Panic started rising. The pain was so severe I could barely think straight. I then called my Aunt Katie, my mom's sister. She picked up on the second ring. Lena, what's wrong, honey? It's late, she said. I'm crying so hard I can barely talk. Something's wrong with me. I need to get to the hospital. I can't reach Mom. There was a horrible pause. Then Katie sighed. Oh, sweetie, your mom's busy with that new guy she's seeing. Just call an ambulance. Busy with her boyfriend while I was dying on the bathroom floor. I hung up and dialed 911. The paramedics showed up about 8 minutes later, which felt like forever. They took one look and instantly sprang into action. One EMT kept saying, BP's dropping. We need to move now. In the ambulance, they put an IV in my arm and gave me oxygen. The pain was so intense that I kept fainting. I remember asking if they could call my mom, and one paramedic said they'd try to reach my emergency contacts at the hospital. Turns out my appendix had ruptured, completely burst inside me. The doctor later told me if I'd waited even 2 more hours, I probably wouldn't have survived. Dying at 19 over something that could have been fixed if caught early, I woke up after surgery, alone. No family at my bedside. The nurses were kind, asking if I needed anything or someone called. I said no, what was the point? For 3 days, no one came. No texts asking if I was okay. No flowers, no calls. The nurses gave me looks of sympathy. One older nurse, Helen, even brought me extra pudding because she said I looked too skinny. On day 4, my mom finally showed up. But she didn't rush through the door, crying and worried. She casually walked in, scrolling her phone, sitting like it was a casual visit. Hey, baby, you look better, she said. See, I told you it wasn't that serious. I stared at her. She wasn't even looking at me. The doctor said, You're fine now, right? These things happen. Your Aunt Katie made it sound like you were dying, she added dismissively. She's so dramatic. That was when I lost it. I almost died. My appendix burst. She finally looked up, but then said, But you didn't. You're fine. Stop being so dramatic. She stayed maybe 20 minutes, mostly complaining about hospital parking fees and how her new boyfriend Jake was taking her to some fancy restaurant that weekend. She left saying she'd check on me later and never came back. When I got discharged, Helen the nurse offered to call me a ride. I refused, figuring it out myself. Took an Uber home to my empty dorm room. My roommate was out for the weekend. 2 months later, at Thanksgiving, my cousin Dylan accidentally let something slip. He mentioned how his mom, my Aunt Rachel, had called around looking for my mom during my surgery. It turned out my mom wasn't even in town. She'd gone on a weekend trip to Vegas with Jake, leaving her phone off to disconnect. She was playing slot machines while I was being cut open to save my life. That was it for me. I moved out of the dorms that December, got my own place with student loans, and blocked my mom's number. I changed my emergency contact to Helen the nurse because a stranger cared more about me than my own mother. Haven't spoken to her since. Best decision I ever made. Story 2. My wife was unaware that I earned $70,000 a month. She aggressively threw hot water on me and kicked me out of the house, mockingly saying, Beggars who can't work. You need to get out of this house and never show your face again. I left. But the next day, when she woke up, she was shocked to see that her house. Chapter 1. The Boiling Point. The kitchen smelled of burnt rice when it happened. I was late coming home after a long day, tired but quiet, expecting nothing more than peace. Instead, my wife's anger greeted me the moment I stepped in. You're worthless. A beggar who can't even work properly. Before I could even respond, she grabbed a kettle and flung steaming water at me. The searing pain across my arm made me stumble back, stunned, not just by the burn, but by the betrayal. And as I tried to process, she shoved me toward the door, venom dripping from every word. Get out of this house. Never show your face again. Her sister, lounging on the couch with a smirk, laughed as if it were a show put on for her entertainment. I looked at my wife one last time, her face twisted in arrogance, and I said nothing. No anger, no threats, just silence. Then I walked out. She thought she had banished me. She thought I was a beggar. She had no idea I earned $70,000 a month. And when she woke up the next morning, her house would no longer be hers. Chapter 2. The Calm Exit, the Quiet Plan. I walked out of the house that night with nothing but my wallet and phone. No clothes, no suitcase, no anger in my words. My skin still stung from the boiling water. But the deeper wound was the realization of how little she thought of me. To her, I was nothing. She believed I was a man scraping by, begging for scraps, lucky to even live under her roof. She didn't know the truth, that I had kept my earnings, investments, and accounts hidden from her greed. Every month, $70,000 flowed into my accounts from the business I had built quietly over years. But I had never flaunted it, never bragged, never waved it in her face. I lived modestly, partly because I preferred simplicity, partly because I wanted to see if she loved me for me, not for what I had. Now I had my answer. That night, instead of checking into a cheap motel like she probably imagined, I drove downtown and met my lawyer. I placed the house deed on his desk. "It's in my name, isn't it?" I asked. He skimmed the papers, smirk, tugging at his lips. "Every brick of it. She has no legal claim. Do you want to move quickly?" I nodded. By morning, while she slept soundly, smug in her victory, papers were being filed, accounts were being updated, locks were being scheduled for change. Her castle was slipping from her hands, and she didn't even know it. She thought she had thrown out a beggar, but by the next sunrise, she'd wake up to realize she had thrown out the owner. Chapter 3. The Morning Shock. The sun hadn't even fully risen when the first cracks appeared in her fantasy. She rolled out of bed lazily, smug in the thought that she had thrown out a beggar. But when she tried to open the front door to collect the newspaper, her key didn't fit. She jiggled it, twisted harder, but it was useless. Confused, she stepped outside through the back door, only to find the front door glinting with a brand new lock. A notice from the locksmith was taped neatly to the frame. Work completed at owner's request. Her face drained of color. On the dining table, slid neatly under the door overnight by courier, was a thick legal envelope. She ripped it open, expecting some petty warning, but it was far more brutal. Notice of eviction effective immediately. She had no legal right to remain on the property. Proof of ownership, copies of the deed, showing the house was solely mine, inherited and paid for long before she ever walked into my life. Divorce filing, citing abuse, supported with medical evidence of the burn on my arm, every word carved deeper than any slap or insult she had thrown. She screamed, waking her sister. They both stormed toward the driveway to leave, only to find my car parked calmly across the street. I sat behind the wheel. Windows rolled down, watching as realization dawned on them. I didn't shout, I didn't gloat. I simply lifted my phone and snapped a picture. Her clutching the eviction notice, her sister staring in disbelief. Then I drove away. She thought she had thrown out a beggar. But by morning, she wasn't standing in her house anymore. She was standing in mine, and it was only the beginning of her nightmare. Chapter 4. The Public Humiliation. By noon that day, what had started as her private arrogance turned into a spectacle she could never escape. The locksmith's van returned with officers accompanying him to finalize the changeover. My wife and her sister stood outside shouting, waving the eviction notice in protest. But the officers simply shook their heads. "Ma'am, the deed is in his name. You're trespassing. You need to leave immediately." Neighbors peeked through curtains, some even stepping onto their porches. The same neighbors she had boasted to bragging about kicking out a useless husband were now watching her be escorted off the property. The whispers started instantly, phones lifted to record. By the evening, the story had spread across the block. She tried to save face by storming to her car and announcing she would go shopping. But when her credit card declined at the first store, her facade crumbled. Every account she had access to under my name was already frozen. The life of luxury she took for granted, the spa visits, the shopping trips, the expensive brunches, ended in an instant. She was left standing at the register, humiliated in front of strangers as the cashier handed her back the useless card. Her sister, who had laughed when I was thrown out, turned on her just as quickly. "You said the house was yours. You said you owned everything. I left my apartment because of you." Their fight, loud and bitter, echoed in the parking lot as people recorded on their phones. The very allies she thought would cheer her on were now tearing her down. She mocked me as a beggar, screamed for me to leave, and thought the house was hers. But by the end of the day, she had no house, no cards, and no allies. And the humiliation she tried to hand me in private had become her humiliation in public. Chapter 5. The Legal Strike. If public humiliation had shaken her, the next wave would crush her completely. While she was busy shouting in the streets and scrambling for cash, my lawyer was quietly filing papers downtown. Assault charges for the boiling water she had thrown. Divorce petitions citing abuse and cruelty. Financial freezes on every account she had touched. By the time she realized what was happening, the court summons had already been served to her at her mother's house in front of her entire family. In court, she tried to spin her usual story. He's broke. He's useless. I supported him for years, but my lawyer calmly laid down bank statements showing my monthly income, $70,000 a month, every month. Investments, savings, properties, all legally documented and untouchable by her lies. The judge's eyebrows rose with every page. Her story of being the sole supporter evaporated instantly, and when photos of the burn marks on my arm were shown, supported by medical records. The courtroom sympathy swung entirely. The court awarded full ownership of the house to me. She was permanently barred from entering. No alimony due to her proven abuse. Restraining conditions tied to the assault charge, limiting her access to me entirely. Financial penalties for damages paid out of what little savings she still had. Her face collapsed as the gavel fell. The arrogance she had once wrapped around herself had been stripped away, leaving nothing but shame. She had mocked me as a beggar, thrown boiling water on me, and kicked me out. But in court, it wasn't me who was begging. It was her. Chapter 6. The Final Lesson and Aftermath. The courtroom verdict had ended the battle, but the ripples of my wife's choices continued long after. What she thought was victory, throwing me out, mocking me, boasting to her family, became the foundation of her own collapse. Financially, she was cut off completely. No access to my income, no alimony, no property. The luxury she flaunted vanished overnight. Socially, the same friends and relatives who laughed when she called me a beggar now whispered about her downfall. Some even avoided her, ashamed to be associated with the scandal. Personally, her sister, once her ally, blamed her for dragging the family name through humiliation. The bond between them fractured, leaving her isolated. The arrogance she wore so proudly turned to loneliness and regret. For me, peace came not from revenge alone, but from rebuilding. I upgraded the house, restoring it into a home filled with calm instead of chaos. I poured more into my business. And with every deal closed, I reminded myself, silence and patience are stronger than rage. I surrounded myself with people who valued respect, not those who mocked when they thought I had nothing. The $70,000 I earned each month wasn't just income anymore. It became a symbol of what she had underestimated. The power of quiet strength. That night, she screamed, "Beggars who can't work! Get out of this house and never show your face again." But in the end, it wasn't me who begged. It was her begging for keys to a house she never owned. Begging for money she never earned. Begging for a dignity she had thrown away with a splash of boiling water. And the greatest revenge, I never raised my voice. I only raised the truth. Epilogue, years later. Since you asked me to continue, let's take this story beyond the courtroom and public humiliation into the years afterward, when the lessons of betrayal and revenge left their lasting marks. Her final downfall time was cruel to her, in ways no courtroom verdict could have been. Financial ruin, without alimony, without a share of my wealth, she bounced from one low-paying job to another. The luxury she once mocked me with became nothing more than a memory. Social exile, the neighbors, friends, and even her own sister never let her forget the spectacle. The eviction, the credit cards declined, the courtroom exposure. Every circle she entered carried whispers. Loneliness, arrogance had been her shield. But when it cracked, no one remained to stand by her. Even her own family, tired of the shame, distanced themselves. She thought she had won by burning me with water. In reality, she had drowned herself. For me, those years were a season of rebuilding and triumph. Business growth. What was once $70,000 a month multiplied, I expanded, invested, and thrived, no longer weighed down by her entitlement. Personal peace. The house became a symbol of resilience, not of conflict. I redesigned it into a home of light and freedom, each wall carrying the quiet message. I endured and I rose. Emotional clarity. I learned that silence and patience often cut deeper than rage. She screamed. I whispered. And the world chose the whisper. That night she screamed, "Beggars who can't work. Get out of this house and never show your face again." But years later, when people passed the house and saw me, successful, calm, surrounded by respect, and saw her, worn down, bitter, and forgotten, the truth was undeniable. I had never been the beggar. She had been the one begging for money, for dignity, for a chance to rewrite the past. And I never gave it to her.